This is the Total Perspective Vortex. I'm Tragula.
And I'm Christian.
It's June 29th, 2020, and a Monday. And uh, Christian, I've been struggling over the weekend to try and write a 5-minute script for one of our episodes. And since we're still in the show is still new and in the experimental phase, I thought we could go over my script a bit, and I could flesh out
Sure.
some of the ideas and see how that goes.
Yeah, let's do that. That makes a lot of sense.
Okay, so this script is on the repeating theme of the show, which is that racism is racial tribalism. Racism. We use the word racism to describe a specific form of problems that keep occurring in our society. But lately, it seems that those problems have been getting worse, not better. Think back 10 years ago. 10 years ago, do you think you could have given a definition of the word racism? Definition of the word racism that both you and your friends would agree to? What about now? Do you think you could give a definition of the word racism now? Would you dare to even try to define the word racism at your workplace or in public? The meaning of the word has been taken from you.
That's interesting. Yeah, yeah. You're already hitting on some interesting, poignant insights. I don't know. I
Yeah.
feel like I'm there's when you hear something truthful, well articulated,
Oh. Oh.
it kind of.
So, give me more.
Please go on.
But yeah, I actually this is actually the second draft of this the intro in that. And first, I was trying to go for a much more factual thing, like to sort of
Okay.
but it really wasn't what I wanted to hit on because I'm trying to
Right.
get at the psychology of this, and I hope that people can recognize that like something has shifted dramatically in the culture where
Right.
we can't even talk about these issues anymore. Like there's something, there's a flavor of it now, right? Like now, like I don't think I'm alone in this. I think that most people would feel now like even the woke, it's like that define racism thing is going to be a, a lot
Trickier.
sketchier for you, right?
Right.
And you're not going to expect people to agree with you is the other thing, the other key part of that.
And I wonder, that's a good point that you just made there. Even as a leftist, I feel like they're maybe even more hyper aware of like the social kind of constraints around this stuff. And
Yeah.
even asking a leftist that's kind of on board. When I say leftist, I mean they're kind of on board with this tribalist project. But even them, it must be like a bit scary. Like, how are you using enough inclusive language? Are you or you know, there's a certain trickiness to that for sure, even for them.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, yeah, the fear that you're describing is obviously, if you're on the right or a centrist or even center left, you probably disagree with it, and
Yeah.
be
Well, I think the
careful. But
center left, like they're the most quiet on this, but they're the ones who are most scared, right? Because
they're the most
they're the they're the ones who have the most to lose, just like circle of friends wise,
right.
and they're trying to pantomime to something they don't really understand or don't agree with. So they have to
Right.
be really careful with what they say.
That's interesting. Right. Yeah, I've already lost all my leftist friends, so I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
That's not true.
Yeah. as our
But yeah.
grasp on as our grasp on the world has diminished, these societal woes have gotten worse, not better. It feels like race relations are lower than they have been in decades. This is not an accident. This is intentional. For various reasons, people have been twisting the meaning of our words. When I say twisting the meaning, I don't just mean intentionally misunderstanding people. Interpreting what people says in bad faith, although people are doing that, people are using their influence in academia and the media to change the definition of words. most essential to solving our societal's problems. They are taking away our ability to solve our society's problems to play political power games. This is a paragraph like I feel like needs the most work. It has some good ideas in there, but I feel like my phrasing is difficult. Like even like other
Right.
people could societal woes in that sentence. Like I think most people like there are more articulate people who could navigate that sentence better than I, but I feel like the meaning is sort of being lost there. But what I'm getting
Well,
at is
right. What are you getting at
is
exactly?
is that there's two things going on, right? First, there's when you say things on social media or that there's people who are acting in bad faith, will actively attempt to put words in your mouth to twist what you say to use it against you, right?
Right.
And people are aware of that. But there's something else going on that's far more sinister, that there are people who are using their influence in academia and media to actually twist the meaning of the words, who are
Right.
using the word, pushing the meaning of the words and using them in situations where they don't really apply to broader meaning. They're giving large, vague definitions. There's this Mott and Bailey technique going on where they'll have like a definition they use to attack people, but also a definition they use to defend.
So Mott and Bailey. So you want to clarify that? I'm
It's
not
a,
sure
it's
what you
an
mean.
old castle construction where you'd have a Mott would be your less protected area where most of like your life and stuff would go on, and then the Bailey would be the inner secure castle. So you'd have two lines of defense. So the idea is that the words are being defined in a Mott and Bailey fashion. They have two meanings. One is
Mm,
is sort of like the meaning that's easier to defend, but you can't
right.
really do anything with, at least not what you want to do with. And then there's this second meaning that you use to attack people or to go out and build the stuff you want to build. That's the Mott, right? But whenever someone comes and says, "Well, hey, I don't like what you're doing," you just retreat to the Bailey. Like a old school example of this is uh, feminism just means
Feminism.
equality.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Or
That's
equality is
exactly
just,
what I
it
was
means you
thinking.
want to have equality of the sexes. Well, obviously, if you look at most of what is done these days in the name of feminism, you can't defend that as the definition. Like you say,
Right.
I, I'm like a I want to kill all men because I'm just interested in the equality of the sexes, right? Like,
Right.
is um,
I, I mean, just
it does not follow.
bring up any male issue. You know, one that's like, let's say, more men die in the workplace, something like that. I mean, they don't want to focus on that. I mean, immediately,
Yeah.
it's very easy to poke holes in that.
So
Like
so there's that's the Martin Bailey
Martin
fallacy.
Bailey. Okay, I see.
But there's an engineering project. I just wanted to draw attention to the fact that there's an engineering project uh, being done, a social engineering project being done by activists in academia and activists in the media who are using their influence to change our language such that, and change our language in a very specific way, so that the definitions of words that are most essential to solving society's problems are twisted or damaged. So they're actually taking away our ability to solve society's problems because they want to play political power games.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Clearly, yeah. And just to that, clearly, there's a lot of engineering that's gone into a lot of these
Yeah.
words.
Words are powerful things. Words help us see the world. When words are formed with precision, they are tools that let us make sense out of chaos and communicate powerful ideas. Well formed words let us see and understand the world in many meaningful ways. So that's a paragraph on uh, the power of words. That actually the ideas we have, our beliefs, help us shape what we see and what we pay attention to. So they're absolutely critical.
Right.
The world can be interpreted in an infinite number of ways, a bounded infinity. I always like to put, because there are places that are out of bounds, but it's nonetheless infinite. Where I'm going with that is that your ideas and beliefs help create the filters and what people, this is where they get the term the lens that you use to see the world.
Right.
And
Right. So
if
I'm
you,
just I'm wondering if an example would be helpful in this case. It seems like an orphaned paragraph a little bit.
oh,
Um,
it's moving into the next one.
okay.
Um, when words are misshapen or corrupted, they are no longer good tools. This reduces our ability to understand the world and to communicate clearly with one another. They can be used as weapons to confuse and drive us apart.
Yeah. Well, clearly with
Yeah.
the I think the example it is what you're discussing, but yes, the example of the word uh, racism it's a perfect example of that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we're now if you're black, you can no longer be racist in the new social justice definition. I don't think they're there yet. I think most people still kind of hold on to they have like the
Most people are afraid to comment. That's the key
they're
thing.
afraid to. That's true, but I
And
think
most people are
racism.
are trying to bring the unreasonable into their tent, right? So they're trying to negotiate with terrorists.
They're
Uh,
trying to. Funny.
well, no, seriously, like these because these activists they're
Yes.
trying to they're using violence for political ends, right? And they're actively trying to harm people and cause terror in order to get their political ends, right? To That's what they're trying to do. Like that's what cancel culture is about. Cancel culture is a form of terrorism, and people are going to scream, "Oh my God, how dare you!" But it's true because it's not. It's an intimidation tactic.
Well, one argument that I've heard before is that in modern society we don't murder people. We don't actually murder them for the most part, unless you're like a Clinton or something. But we don't really murder people. But what we do is we murder them in the public square. So
Well,
it's like so it's not that you're literally say but they do everything that they can to get rid of that person short of actually murdering them.
I think that there's 104 people in on Father's Day weekend who might disagree with that assessment of our current cultural climate.
Interesting. Yeah.
Because see, like, so there's this is the thing is that we play these games and we don't recognize our privilege. Like, but I mean, it's there are costs to this, and they get rid of people by whatever means necessary. Like that's actually like one of the they actually call their an organization in
Right.
California, an anti-fraud organization is called by whatever means necessary.
Bam.
Bam. So
Yeah.
like don't pretend that these leftists uh, won't kill you or throw acid on your face if they think they can get away with it. And
Mm.
when the cops are told to stand down and our politicians are kneeling, they're getting bolder and bolder. So here's a better definition. Racism is a form of tribalism. It is racial tribalism. This is a useful definition because tribalism is something we can recognize and manage. We can identify the bigotry associated with the tribalism as part of human nature and correct for it. We can use our methods of dealing with tribalism in other situations to deal with racism. If racism was racial tribalism, what would it look like? We would see people giving preference to their own race and othering outsiders based on racial signifiers. We would see unfair generalizations placed on individual members of the other race, treating them as morally inferior, making negative moral judgments on individuals of the other racial tribe. If we looked for racial tribalism, we would see racism.
Yeah.
So you see, I'm tying in there back into what I talked about, how words shape what we see, and that's sort of I'm trying to use this definition, racial tribalism, to demonstrate its power of seeing what we generally consider is racism, right? Like the
Right.
common understanding, the layman's understanding, the common sense understanding of racism.
Is there so I'm just kind of ask questions around that. I'm not sure exactly where should because there's also a it's a good definition that I think I'll have to ponder on for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Like my instinct is to go to places like it's a certain, like for me it might be a little more poetic about it or something, but it's like a hatred in your heart. It's like it's a, that you carry with you for the other.
Okay,
But
my you want to be more poetic, and certainly we could do something that way. But what I'm optimizing for in this
yep.
definition is something that's actionable, something that we can understand, something that can move the conversation forward. That's what I'm most interested in. So that's my litmus test for the clarity of a definition.
Okay.
Right? Is
Okay.
yeah. And that's where I'm going with this now. So I'm going to be start talking more about tribalism.
Okay.
There are other forms of tribalism we recognize and manage. People can be tribal about their sports teams, team tribalism, and their nation, national tribalism, nationalism. These are more benign forms of tribalism that we recognize when they get out of hand and have ways of correcting. Right? So I'm pointing out there that, like, look, there's other forms of tribalism that we engage in. And I'm trying to keep them sort of more clear cut and more to the idea of what people generally think of tribalism. So we can show that we have ways of dealing with tribalism. Right.
So I'll give pushback that I don't necessarily agree with, but I'll give that pushback anyway. But um, just because you said that you included nationalism in a more benign form
Mm-hmm.
of
I didn't I?
of tribalism. So I agree with you, but what about the Nazis? And
That's it's a trigger.
maybe boot that out for
I
you
did that
too.
on purpose. Because I wanted to get that exact sort of reaction of the right people. Because yeah, you want to make sure that you have some controversy in what you say to get some fire going, right?
How
So,
Trumpian of you.
yes, I learned my lessons from the God Emperor.
Judas himself.
Yeah. Um, yeah, but that's the idea there. So, and if I go on, I'm going to explain it more. But I just wanted to actually talk about, that there are problems. There are certainly problems with nationalism, but it's a comparative thing, and I think that we're going to have to end up on forming our tribes somehow. And the ways that we form our tribes, I think that I think that nationalism is a more benign form than racism, and more productive too. There's actually some good that comes out of nationalism, and there's much less of a case for the good that comes out of racism. There are other examples of tribalism that cause serious social problems, like gang tribalism. Maybe we should call it gangism. Gangism disproportionately affects black communities. This Father's Day weekend in Chicago, 104 people were shot, 15 fatally, including a 3-year-old child. Gangism is a bigger problem in Western societies than racism, but it doesn't get as much attention.
Right. I mean, if Black Lives Matter, right?
Yeah,
Like if
black.
that if
Yeah.
that is if that if you're clearly stating what it is that you're like your objective by saying Black Lives Matter, or not objective, but like what it is that you're trying to do, and what you're trying to focus in on, um, then clearly this would be something you would focus on, but they don't. um,
Yeah. Yeah. No, it is, and I mean, I chose something like that, but it's also, and there's a reason why they don't tackle gangism, and I think I'm going to get to that in the next paragraph. But it's I think it's a legitimate concern that we can see that, and you can see that sort of gangism sort of merges with sports team tribalism, right?
right.
You get that you can get gangs of hooligans out of sports teams as well. So you see that similarity. You see this problem, like you see the connections between this human problems, right? You can see this. So I think this is where we need to direct our conversation and energy, and sort of just see racism as just another formation of this common problem.
Okay.
Tribalism is part of human nature, and there's a form of tribalism that is most wholesome: familial tribalism, family. The evidence strongly suggests that the young men who form gangs lack fathers and families. If we encouraged people to build strong familial tribes, families, perhaps we would see less gang tribalism.
I mean, that's the diagnosis that a lot of the Black leaders have. Obviously, you're wording it differently,
Yeah.
and I'm seeing the utility of that as this conversation goes on. But
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah,
But I'm wording it differently because now I'm linking it to
right,
look. So to this conversation about tribalism. So I'm trying to build definitions of words that help us get to the problems and solve the problems, and
right.
bridge that divide as well. Because people are gonna um, accuse me of being a closet conservative here, or something along those lines. And oh, you're just trying to sneak in conservatism, like Tim Pool gets that a lot. And it's like,
Oh, is that right?
yeah, yeah, but he gets that because he just reports the news and the facts as best as he can. And I think I do that because I'm going to get that because that's part of my project. I think that there is the conservatives, the right have and the right have a valuable message for society, but it can't be translated because of the way we've constructed things in the Western world with our prohibition, like the secularization of the public square. Morality can't. The Western morality has been blocked out. Like what makes the West work has been blocked out of the conversation in the public square. And I think that that's part of the political power games is they've tried to shift language in such a way as that to emphasize that more or create that isolation more. So I'm trying to shift it back. So I'm trying to make um, arguments for family, for maybe a more what some people would consider the conservative perspective. I think it's a little more sophisticated than that, but
Right.
along those lines, I'm going to be arguing for a lot of things that the conservatives argue for, but they don't have arguments that appeal to people on the left, the quote unquote liberals, um, and this is and so that's what I'm going on. I'm trying to do here. So perhaps managing racism is just a matter of paying attention to how we form and stack our tribes, and forming and stacking our tribes in the most positive manner. I suggest family, friends, community, country as a well formed tribal stack. If we have strong, healthy, well formed tribes, there will be no need for racial tribes. Just as strong, healthy families can reduce the formation of gangs. Racial tribalism is a problem we can solve. Define our words so we can see the problem clearly and we can minimize racism.
Well, yeah. So that's a good conclusion
Yeah.
to um, kind of the discussion that we were having.
Yeah.
Kind of the discussion that we were having. I'm using that almost like using the word like, whatever. Uh, uh, my only question here is I think it's a good place to end probably.
That's the end of the script.
But right. No,
Oh
no, no, no. I don't mean in terms of the episode or anything. So, but I
no,
mean it's a good
that's the
point.
end of the script. There's no more
Right.
script. So
But
it's good that you feel like
so
it's resolved in an ending because that was the intention of that
right, that's the
paragraph.
intent. I'm just wondering. Again, it's probably a good place to end this particular script. But I'm wondering if that's where there's, excuse me, also a discussion of nationalism, or did you maybe stay away from that because leftists?
No,
shy away from nationalism.
I think like nationalism. I'm trying to keep this 5 minutes. I want this something that someone will click on and listen to the end. Right.
Right.
That's my goal. So there's definitely like this could be a book easily, like this whole concept.
Right.
If someone can write a book on eat the frog, I can write 200 pages uh, on racism is racial tribalism. I could certainly do that.
And when the publisher asks you to pad it out to 350
I think it's
pages,
200. I think 200 is the magic number. I may be wrong.
is
I,
it?
I could I would
Okay.
I could certainly write like 50 useful
Fluff
pages,
pages.
50
Oh,
useful
right,
pages,
right.
and then make it 200 uh, for
150 of fluff
yeah for fluff.
examples and
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
stories around. Yeah, exactly.
um,
I think most books today could be replaced by a significant blog post.
yeah, but I want to get the conversation going, right? This is just sort
Yes,
of
yeah.
this is a manifesto, if you will, of to change the definitions, and I just want to make some interesting points to uh, that I'm trying to create a fortified position for people who want to argue against postmodernists.
Right.
So when they're saying, oh, racism is like this whiteness and so forth, it's like, no, I think racism is racial tribalism. Let's talk about that. This is my definition. That's your definition. Let's see which definition better fits the social phenomena that we're uh, that we're dealing with here. Let's look at your examples, and then let's talk about how whose definition, whose approach can actually make progress in solving this problem.
Hmm. Okay.
Okay, so that's the
I think
goal.
that's a good. I think that's a good place to stop. That sounds like a conclusion to me.
Yeah. Thanks, Christian. Take care.
Thank you. Cheers.